This meeting will be recorded for the minutes and will be broadcast online. If you're not happy with this, please leave the meeting. Thank you. Right, can we start? Welcome, everyone. Any apologies on the end? Yes.
Tim
Jones, Hughes, Jones, Errol Roberts, JC Evans, Tim Jones, Alice Lloyd. Thank you. Any others? If not, we'll go to declaration of interest. Any declarations of interest? And then we'll go to the minutes now. I propose that's correct. Anyone second that? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anything arising from the minutes? No. Fourth item then, reports from the Director of Planning. There's one planning application. Aled. Jane is seeking a planning application. Okay, thank you. Jane.
I'll just try and share my screen now. Right, can everybody see the?
Yeah.
Okay, then this is an advertisement consent for an interpretation panel at Glastonbury and Nantural. Obviously, the application has been brought to committee as the application site is on land owned by the authority. This is the location. Hopefully, everyone is familiar. Members are familiar with Glastonbury and the surrounding grounds. But the actual location of the application and the proposal is, I think you'll see that there's a very sort of slight dot here, down at the overflow car park, which is obviously the paths leading up to Glastonbury. The actual location of the interpretation panel will be here, and it will replace these three existing panels, which will be removed. And that obviously there's a pathway. The pathways next is bring up to Glastonbury itself. So you know the context of the actual location of the panel. So the actual panel itself relates to the Slate Landscape World Heritage Site, and it actually forms a wider project covering the actual designation. The actual proposal for the interpretation panel takes the form of a lectern type panel, and it will be approximately 1 metre by 0.4 metres in size. It will not be illuminated anyway, and I think you'll see in the bottom right hand corner here, you will note that the actual panel will be bilingual. So turning to the main planning considerations, there is national policies, technical advice note 7, and that's outdoor advertisements and control. There's ERRI, local development plans, development policy 1, strategic policy A, but also development policy 10, which is the main policy in this instance. And the relevant criteria that the actual interpretation panel needs to consider is that basically it doesn't harm the character of a building or prominent view. It's not internally illuminated, and its size and scale does not detract from the character of the immediate surrounding area and also the wider landscape, and that it also does not resemble a highway sign. So in relation to this proposal, it is considered that the sign is going to have a minimum impact on the wide landscape in the area. Obviously, it's not near to any specific building as such. It will not be illuminated. It will be bilingual, and that there'll be sort of in minimal works to actually erect and obviously that three panels will be removed in the process, so resulting in less impact. So conclusion is that the actual interpretation panel will comply with development policy 10, and it also complies with strategic policy A by promoting opportunities for the understanding and enjoyment of the special policies of the area by the public. So the recommendation is to grant application subject to 5 standard conditions contained in the Control of Advertisement Regulations 1992, and also to have the additional conditions stipulating that the sign will be limited to a period of 5 years being sited at that location, and that it will be displayed in accordance with the approved plans.
Okay, thank you. Any comments at all? Proposals? Edgar? Any comments at all? My hand is up. I can't see your hand. I'm raising my hand. What will the frame be made of? Is it wood?
I believe it will be wood.
Yeah, they're going to be shoving on
I hope it will be, not plastic, because we want to reduce carbon and use natural materials. Hope it will be wood and not plastic or anything. Okay, thank you. Any other comments? If there's nothing, we'll take a vote. All who agree, please find the green tick. Can't see people, that's a problem. That's been carried, I think, hasn't it? Yes, it has, yes. Thank you very much. That's it then, for planning. On to the compliance cases on page 15. Anything you want to raise there? We'll take it page by page. Page 16, 15, 16. Mr. Chairman, yes, Anwen. On number 4, Isonaidd Hotel, Salsarnau, works being carried out, it says, and the site visit has taken place. Can you tell me what they're going to be doing with the hotel? Because people were saying on the area that, and there was a talk of being a halfway house for people who have drugs problems and that sort of thing. And they're saying this is going to happen again, that the same thing will happen. Local people are not happy at all. I don't know if you're aware of the use they're going to be making of this.
This is a new compliance case that has come to our attention. I'll need to actually speak to the case officer, Alice Tatham, to find out sort of further details. But I'll certainly I can do that and provide you with an update. Yes, but also obviously I can take your concerns on in relation to what you've just said. Yes, I can get them.
You can let me know. I'd be really grateful. I can convey this to people who get in touch with me. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Any other points on page 16? 17? 18? 19? 20? 21? 22? 23. Brian had his hand up. I can't see him. Sorry. Brian, yes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me. Yes, on well, there's a general point really on number 30 on page 21, and then again on 36 and 37 on 22. We've got a number of comments there relating to more information or a submission of an application and no further update. I'm wondering whether it's possible to have that tightened up in the comments with some sort of timescale relating to when we might expect some sort of comment, or that it moves on to the next stage. So how long do we leave somebody to put in an application? How long do we wait for a response, as in 37, as in number 37, before it moves on to the next stage? I think it would be helpful to members to know that these are progressing if that was made more specific.
Thank you. Can I reply to that? Certainly, the situation we have at the moment is that the compliance section, we're struggling with buses. So where it's been sort of quite difficult to progress in terms of giving tight. That obviously some cases may sort of lapse more than others, purely because of the fact that the resources that we haven't got the full sort of complement of the compliance section currently at present. Just to provide members with an update in relation to David. David has been successful in being appointed the planning officer for the eastern area of the national park, which means that currently he started at the beginning of November in relation to that post. So he's very kindly, he's still continuing with some of the compliance cases that we have, but it does mean that we have no longer a full-time compliance officer in the section. Alice is only working on a 3-day week. So literally we're down to a 3-day part-time officer in the compliance section at the present. Obviously, as we're able to get additional resources coming forward when the freeze on recruitment is lifted, then hopefully we can address that problem. But it will mean that some of the cases that we have on the list that we're not putting particular tight deadlines on, because it's impossible for us as a section to be able to actually adhere to those. But it's something that we do want to address, obviously, going forward, because it is a case that we do need to progress these matters.
Yeah, Brian.
Thank you. Just one follow-up, Chair, maybe for a discussion at a future time. Obviously, the importance of compliance to the whole process going forward without getting the compliance resourcing situation sorted. It leaves a hole, if you like, in terms of the way that we manage what we're trying to do. So I do understand that we've got problems, but I hope that it doesn't slip too far off the agenda in terms of getting those staff replaced. So as well as looking forward with the development plan, the compliance issue is just as important, and I think we need to make sure that that's kept under close review so that they are replaced. That's not a criticism, it's just a recognition that we just need to make sure that that doesn't slip any further, really.
Iawn, diolch yn iawn am hynna.
Okay, thank you very much. We're on to page 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. There's a hand up. Yes, thank you.
Hi, going back to page 25, there was some unauthorised quarrying and track creation. There's no update since the 3rd of July 2019. I understand that probably the same issue as and not having the staff available, but has another stop notice been placed since the last one ran out?
In relation to that, my understanding was it's actually case officers.
Oh, sorry, I missed the end of that. Oh, can't hear you. It's really quiet. There you go.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Yeah. The case officer is Aled Lloyd. In this, I haven't been able to sort of speak to him recently in relation to, because he's actually currently away. But in relation to that, my understanding is that there was no further works going on there, and we're actually considering the expediency of doing that, because it appears that works had ceased for some time.
Okay, can we not put a stop notice in place to stop those works restarting? Because otherwise it's just in their court, isn't it? So
if there doesn't appear to be a breach of planning control, then it's difficult to sort of preempt and put something in place for that. It would only be if works sort of resurrected again. That is then when we would then look at serving another temporary stop notice.
okay,
or stop
thank you.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr iawn. John
Okay,
Peel.
thanks very much, John Peel. Yes, page 27, number 47, Bryn Creek. This has been since 2017. It's high time something was done. It's a long time. That's 3 Glandŵr, Bryn Creek.
In relation to free Glandura, as I've sort of specified previously on this one, is the problem in being able to progress the sort of initiating prosecution proceedings. We need to be able to ascertain exactly where the owner of that property is, and at the moment we're struggling to ascertain exactly where they are. We've been following up sort of various leads of where they may be. But obviously we need to be able to know exactly where they are located so we can progress that further.
Yeah, I'm in a 5 mlynedd wedi mynd just
5 years have passed since this has come for us.
Iawn.
Yeah, but 5 years, this has been in front of us for 5 years, you know.
Yeah, well, it's been there for 5 years, but we've actually taken the necessary action in terms of serving the Section 215 notice. They haven't complied with it, and our next the next stage is to initiate prosecution. And that is where the issue is, in terms of we need to be able to locate exactly where they are at the present, so we can serve the necessary papers on them.
Have you asked somebody local? You know, there must be some local, not somebody locally, no.
I've been following up various leads that we've had on it, but any correspondence I've been sending or I've been hand delivering, I'm not getting any response. So we need to get something sort of specific so we can progress it further.
Iawn, John.
I think I may be able to help if I can speak to Jane at the end. I know the name of the owner, and I think I know where she works. If that's of any help, I will have a word at the end, if that's okay.
Any information would be gratefully received.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr iawn.
Right, thank you very much, Joe.
Hi, it must be really frustrating for the staff involved not having the staff to be able to do their jobs properly. Has it now hit a crisis point where these need mopping up and we need to get a project board together to actually help and assist and pull some of these really older cases forward and get them dealt with?
Na'i ddod fewn ar y pwynt yma, dwi'n meddwl.
I think, yes, we're no different from any other planning authority in Wales. All authorities have long lists of cases for confirmation, and the nature of them, as I've said a number of times, is that it takes a long time, sometimes years, and we need to follow a process that's set by the law, the formal steps that you have to take, and often the person who's breaking the planning condition or planning condition don't want to work with us. Often they won't speak to us or respond. So these things take years, I'm afraid, sometimes. Matter of staffing is a problem, as Jane says. We have one full-time member, 1.5 members of staff down, and we hope to get Jane back working more in the department in the future. We've frozen recruitment, as members know at the moment, because of the potential cuts in the next financial year. Once these cuts and the recruitment freeze lifted, then hopefully we can go out and fill the vacancy and the half post, and then things will improve, we hope. But another problem is if we didn't have a freeze on recruitment, it's difficult to recruit people to do enforcement. Gwynedd Council have the same problem. It is a problem, Joe. I wouldn't say it's a crisis as such, but it's a problem. And some control, we're sending things up. The staff do well with the resources they have. It's not a crisis, but we do need more staff. There's no doubt about that. And hopefully next year things will improve to some extent.
Cheers. Just to come back in, are the planning staff coping mentally and physically with the work? Are they feeling at the end of the week that they go home and they've done a good job, or is it getting to them now?
Ma' hwnna'n gwestiwn da.
Good question. I know some weeks I've spoken to staff and they've been pushed to the extreme during the week. It's been a bad week. People shout at them sometimes. And sometimes it's okay. There's good weeks when things work. So it does vary. But I'd be lying if I said that everybody finished on a Friday, going home happy then, having had a good week, and they clear the desk, and there's no stress. There is stress in the job, not just in this authority, but in various planning authorities I speak with, and speak with other heads. Often there are stresses in the system. As I say, it's not a crisis, I don't believe.
Okay.
We can improve with capacity, but it's very important that we look after the mental health of our staff, and we're pushed to the extreme some weeks and months. Okay, thank you very much, John Pugh. Mute. On page 29, 40, what is the acronym there now? 49, CLEUD. It's for information, isn't it?
There is an update in that because I've spoken to the owner, and that we are looking at getting a fluid certificate of lawful use application.
Yeah, that's what I asked. What does fluid stand for?
It's a certificate of lawful use application.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, no, that's all I needed to know. I didn't know what he stood for. So.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments there on page 28, 29? Can come in, Mr. Chairman. Coming back to the points made by Jonathan about people being threatening and shouting at staff. What can we do about that? It's not fair that any member of staff has somebody being horrible and unkind. Do we put them bottom of the queue or something because they're so threatening? Don't realise it's supposed to treat staff that way. It does happen from time to time, yes. Perhaps we can't discuss it today, but it does arise from time to time. No members of staff should suffer such abuse. People, that's all. Just to make sure. Yes, thank you. Going on to page 30, 31.
Can I just come in regards to Nanai? And so I'm very conscious that I did say that I would provide members with more of an update this committee. Unfortunately, that was not being able to be the case, because we did actually have a site meeting with the roofing specialist, but it's only taking place yesterday. So I've not been able to provide any sort of specific, sort of more of an update than for this committee. But just to provide, we had a good meeting yesterday, and that the contractor has specified that there's various options that we can look at trying to safeguard the roof in particular at Nanai. And they're going to go away with different options, and also look at the costings just to see how much potentially that's going to be. But also the authority is aware that, that there's a new CADU funded grant that is available from them, and that it's going to go through a process, but we can put an application in just to show an expression of interest, which we're considering doing, and we're looking at now. Obviously, the costings for sort of the roofing and sort of the kind of works that we need to do will be sort of vital for pushing that forward. That's something that we're also looking into. So hopefully we'll be able to provide more of an update at the next committee, but it's just to make members aware that there is definitely sort of progress being made on that now. And hopefully it's looking more likely that we're going to be able to get an urgent repairs notice served in due course.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr iawn, Jane.
Okay, thanks very much, Jane. Brian?
Thank you. Could I just ask for clarification? I'm really pleased that the situation's moving forward there. In relation to the reference to a grant, is the implication there that the National Park would do the work and then put a charge on to the owner? Where does the responsibility lie for making sure that in terms of the cost of making good in that sense, so that it doesn't deteriorate further? So it just sounded that the responsibility was coming to the park, and I wasn't aware that that was the direction we were going on.
In terms of actually serving an urgent repairs notice, one of the things that the authority do need to consider, that if that isn't complied with, that what the next steps would be in terms of sort of initiating further action. And one of those steps would be to initiate direct action, whereby the authority would go in and take that basically undertake the works. But obviously that involves relevant funding that needs to be available. And that is why we're sort of looking at different funding sources, that if we did get to that position, that we would potentially have funding, possibly from CADU or whatever, going forward. So these are the kind of things that we're all having to sort of consider before we just initiate doing the direct serving the urgent repairs notice. Because yes, you can serve an urgent repairs notice, but obviously if it doesn't get complied with, what do we do then? Is it a case that you just leave the building to deteriorate? So say these are the options that we're having to look at the minute, and the relevant avenues of funding that might be available for the future, if that's the kind of action that we're going to be taking.
So is the intention of full paper relating to future action in regard to Nanai will come to a future meeting of this committee or one of our other main committees? Is that the plan?
Yeah, os ga I ddod fewn o fan'na, Cadeirydd.
If I can just come in there, I think what we're intending to do, there are 2 to 3 buildings where we could do this. And of course, we can't afford to do it everywhere. So we have a new officer on the Valmai Carpenter, the built environment officer, and she'll be bringing potentially a paper to this committee to set out how we would prioritize that type of work. At the moment, there is high potential that it will be Nanai. It's a grade 2 star listed building. There is potential to have a sustainable business plan there in the future, but that's something that we need to look further into. So those are the things that we will be considering, and the fact that there is a CADU grant available as well. But there are also similar buildings, so it really depends how we want to prioritize them. We have allocated some authority money for this if we want to undertake emergency work on any building. So an investment now before the winter, say, can save a lot of money in the future, but there will be a paper presented to you in the new year on how we will be prioritizing between the most important buildings in the park. Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Dalen 31.
Page 31.
I'w sylw gyda rywun fan'na?
Any comments?
Os nad oes, awn ni ymlaen i'r cytundebau adran 106
Page 32 in a way. So on to section 106 agreements.
Ryw cwestiwn gyda rywun?
Any questions from anybody?
Dalen 35, ceisiadau sy'n destyn cytundeb adran eto.
Agreements, yet again,
Hefyd.
that's for information as such.
Felly, awn ni ymlaen i ceisiadau na phenderfynwyd arni.
Therefore, on to page 36, outstanding applications where more than 13 weeks have elapsed. Any questions in relation to those?
Thank you, Chair. On
Yep.
page 39, I think it is, halfway down, we've got Inniscourt Penal, which is the BCF hut. I remember that coming to one of my early meetings, and it's still there. It's a long time, more than 13 weeks. I'm just wondering, it says we're waiting again for something from the applicant. Can we not put a timescale on that, whereby if we don't get information in, that's the end of that application, and they have to start again from the beginning? It just seems to be dragging on forever.
I can advise in relation to that particular application. I'm actually in the process of drafting the report for it. It's obviously just getting the opportunity to finalise that, but I can confirm that will hopefully not be on the list in January, because it is going to be finalised. But I take on board that obviously with that particular application, it seems to have been long ongoing. There was lots of issues with sort of the HRA element of it, and obviously with the officer leaving as well. It has gone on for a long time, but obviously it's not sort of a fault of any officer as such. It's just been sort of the way the process has been, but hopefully you'll find that it will not be on the next in January.
Iawn, diolch yn iawn. Joe?
Okay, thank you very much, Joe.
Does the fee that people pay for planning, does it actually cover the costs of the planning application? Or does it go over?
Na,
No, not by far. The planning fee covers about 20% of the cost of the service.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr. June?
June?
Yeah, just dwi'n gwybod, it's on tudalen 39.
Once again, page 39 in the Welsh at least.
Be mae'n olygu? Be di hwnnw?
What's ABC? Sorry, can you ask it to repeat that? The heading, it's awaiting an appropriate assessment. What does that mean? Oh, HRA. Say HRA, Jane. She's asking for it in. Yeah. I think she's referring to a habitat regulation assessment. Sorry, I'm just. Yeah, it's a translation of the Welsh there. On Plas Nant, Betrws Garmon. What's happening with that one? It's been 8 months now since that's been there.
Planning officer in relation to that and provide you with an update afterwards, but I'm guessing that there's HRA implications, and that's the delay with relation to that. The appropriate assessment and providing, it takes time with the ecologist to provide us with the actual assessment and the conclusions on that, and that is that probably the delay's been, but I can double check for you and from the relevant planning officer.
Can I get an email about it, yeah?
Yeah.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr. Pwy arall ar 39?
Okay, thanks. Anybody else in relation to that page? If not, on to the permitted applications for information. 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, and those that have been refused on page 48. 49, 50, 51. Do you have any questions in relation to those? On to number 7 now, which is the decision of the Supreme Court in Aberdyfi. And can I just thank Jonathan and Diwan for all of the work that they've done. It started and ended with you. I remember that Jonathan was saying that he was going to pursue this, and we've won it in the end. So who's going to be dealing with this? Jonathan, is it? Jane was also a really important part of the team, obviously. C1 was also an important part of the process as well, but because you've thanked us at the beginning, I will mention the people that were crucial in this process. This is for information. It's been a bit of a saga. It was first raised in 2016. It was a big issue in Aberdyfi, where there was planning permission for 400 odd houses. So I've given you an update following the court proceedings, but for new members, basically there were 41 houses that had been completed from the original planning permission. Not any one of those were in accordance with the original permission. Mostly they had been permitted with additional applications involved. So in 2016, we got to the point where there were several questions being posed to us as an authority from the developer. Jane was aware of the engineering works that was going on the site. They were developing more houses, is what we thought at the time. Rebecca Jones on the policy side of things was receiving questions on the review of the plan as well, and how this site could fit into the review of the plan. And I was personally getting questions as well about the future of the site. And so we came to the conclusion as officers that it just isn't possible to complete the permission given, because practically, and it wasn't possible because of the size of the estate, and it was just developed on a windfall basis, and we were strongly of the opinion that they couldn't complete the 400 odd, and we consulted with UN and C1, and we took further legal advice, and they agreed with us. And so we wrote to the developer to say, we actually don't think it's possible for you to complete this, and so you shouldn't take any further action on the site. And that's when it went to court in 2019. I won't go into great detail because the detail is in Appendix 1. And for the planning annex, you can watch the case in the Supreme Court online as well if you want to. I watched it. I found it quite interesting. The development itself gives you an overview of what's happened in Appendix 2, which is on the last page in your package. And the black houses outlined there is how they've been developed in accordance with the additional planning permissions. And there are some houses there without planning permission, or they think it's in accordance with the original planning permission. And so we were successful in the court in Cardiff in 2019. And we went to the appeal court and we were successful there again. And then we went to the Supreme Court this year. And once again, we were successful. The conclusion was that it was practical, in a practical sense, it was impossible to complete the development. And there were other complexities, as well as the court case that happened in 1987. And the conclusion was that it was on a physical basis, it is not possible to complete the planning permission. But the main thing really that I want to convey to you today, and in the context of Aberdyfi, what this means is that planning permission has now gone, and so it's not possible to implement it. And so there's no planning permission existing on that site any longer. Any further application on the site in that area has to be in accordance with the local development plan and the development boundary. And the one for Aberdyfi, I must emphasize that it doesn't include a significant part of that permission. It's not included in your document bundle, but the boundary is quite tight to the houses that have already been developed. There is some capacity to develop further, but not much. But obviously that would have to be subject to a planning application. So those are the main implications, planning implications. There are further implications with regard to what this will mean for the industry. It's unbelievable how many articles there have been in the media and press, because this is an important legal issue with regard to what you can do for planning permissions that are a part of a bigger application, and what you call what's known as drop-in permissions, where you drop in permissions onto another. You can do it, it's the main conclusion, but you have to be very careful to demonstrate that that additional permission doesn't affect the capacity of the rest of the sites being developed, but I'll leave that to developers. I won't make too many comments on that. But lastly, something that did concern us and certainly concerned Iwan was the cost implications of this. Every time we went higher up in the courts, obviously the stakes went higher and higher, and the financial implications became a cause of concern for all of us. And I'm glad to say that we are able to claim the costs back from the developer, and we're in the middle of that process at the moment, and it's coming to an end more or less now. So we will be able to claim some of that money. I'm glad to say that. So that's the conclusion, basically. It's good news for us as an authority and for Aberdyfi as well. Thank you very much. Edgar, your hand is up.
Another question we're going to be.
I'm going to ask a question regarding the cost, where we're at now. It's a limited company, and so could they, go bust before we get the money? I can come in here, actually. We've had an offer of going to the Supreme Court. We had advice that the offer was reasonable. They've been advised to accept it, and there will be some time for things to be, well, they need to release the assets. We're waiting for further information about the costs of the Supreme Court and the Appeal Court, but they will be aware that there will be a further letter going to them in the next few days. So it's in hand, but not yet completed. We won't be able to win back all of the cost or claim back the whole of the costs. There may be an element, say, where we may say it's unreasonable to claim for this, that, and the other. The offer that we got, without any complex assessment, the advice that we got based on that was that we should accept, and so we are going to. But of course, there's no assurance that we'll get we'll be able to claim it back with regard to the appeal court and the Supreme Court. I forgot one thing in the list of thanks. I forgot to thank to Liz Jenkins, who is our GIS officer. She was unbelievably useful going through the files from the 70s. So she was very crucial in this process as well. I also thank the legal team, Gildads, and to Gwion as well, our barrister. He started as a barrister and then ended up as a QC in the end. Without the commitment and all that work from them, we wouldn't have been successful. So I would like to thank them formally as well. Okay, thank you very much for that. We're all very grateful. I wonder if you can answer as to whether are there any further pieces of land, or is there further land where there have been planning permissions that haven't started being developed? Are there any left in the park now? If any permission hasn't commenced, then the permission disappears after 5 years. Well, that's different though, isn't it? But is there any land that may have had permission back in the 60s, say, which still exist? There was one in the Dogella area once. I'm not sure what's happening with that one. Are there any of those left? Not that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of any planning permissions that have not been commenced. That could be developed. The main risk is that the ones that have already been commenced and are live, and if there have been any further developments in the meantime, well, is the same situation relevant as was in Hillside? That's in the park area, of course, but that's the nature of the situation, really. The problem that we have, really, is that we're creating a new plan, and we should really count how many houses there are in the pipeline already in the park. There were about 700 at one time, including Aberdyfi, and we argued with the Welsh Government officers about these issues. And they said back then, in Conwy as well, right, you have enough in the park, and we'll remove the ones from the park, and we'll add them to Gwynedd and Conwy. So they moved them from the park to the other two counties. So it would be good to know really how many planning permissions we have in place that have commenced. We do have that information. Obviously, with any plan review, the supply needs to be a slide that's practically possible to be developed within a reasonable timetable. But if there's no intention or it's too complex for specific reasons, then that wouldn't be included in these plan supply. We have to demonstrate that it's likely to be developed in the next 5 years. Does anybody have any further questions? I can't see anybody's hands up. John Pugh. All they have to do is create the access, and then they've started the work. And well, in how many places on the land have they put the access in? Well, that's the biggest question that we need to answer, really, isn't it? We'll have to look at this when we start on the review of the plan. Any other questions? Anyone? Can I just come in there before the committee comes to an end? We do have a members working group following the planning committee, so I would suggest that we start at 15:15 if everybody's in agreement with that. Okay.
cyfriadur, da ni'n gallu dilyn o hwn, ac da ni'n ddiffodd hwn.
We can't follow on from this straight away, can we? We need to use the new link. Yes, there is a separate link. You need to leave this meeting and use the new link at 15:15. Okay, thank you very much.